All right. Peace. I want to say peace to everyone. Oh, I am laughing because this entire time I have been talking and everything was muted. All right. So um I'm gonna rewind myself, but you all didn't hear anything that I said, and that's that's funny. All right. So again, I want to say peace. I want to say ETM Hotep, which is welcome and peace to all those who are tuned in. And I'm gonna buy a little bit of time. I was buying time actually talking, but everything was muted. So I'm gonna buy a little time for those to tune in and get a little acquainted before we move forward into the discussion. So if anybody's in the chat could just verify for me that you can hear me and that I'm loud and clear and that you can see the video properly, please let me know. All right. I've been sitting here. Everything was muted, and that was funny. So, again, welcome. I see we have Brother Omar Reed. We have Real G's TV. And again, he posted a link to the UNESCO text. So, for those who need it, you can click on that link, I assume, and somehow and get it and figure that out. Firelight and Tist. We have Brother Jerome Lockhart. All right. So, that's who I see in the chat so far. I have a few more watching. So yeah, share this link. So tonight, we're just gonna continue where we left off. So the title of this video is Discussion and Review. Cheikh Anta Diop's his article, The Egyptians as They Saw Themselves. And so this is part 2. And we did part 1 a week ago. And it's in the archives. It's the video just before the last video in our archives on this channel. Okay, so if you've missed out on part 1, definitely watch it. But to follow along with what we're going to talk about tonight, you don't need to necessarily see part 1. So you should be able to follow along just fine. But you definitely have to watch part 1. And like I said, I want to keep these videos manageable in terms of time, digestible. And last week we've kind of violated that. We went over 2 hours. So I want to keep all videos under 2 hours. It's bad enough to try to get people to watch an archived video that's longer than 2 hours or even 2 hours at that. So I'm going to try to be concise and on point as possible, but at the same time, not skip too much. All right. So and once I'm done giving some commentary, I will address questions in the chat, because if I invite people on the panel, that's how we get the videos to be very, very long, because everyone has a lot to say. And, I like the interaction, but at the same time, I have to balance it out and keep this video short. All right. And actually, I do videos that are just dedicated to the interaction. So that way, I just have panel videos where 2 hours, just everybody on the panel, open mic, people get to ask questions, share information, etc. But I like to always do that separately in its own video. All right. So again, if you have not subscribed, subscribe. Make sure you tick the bell so you can be notified whenever we're live on this channel, and share this video. All right. So with all of that out of the way, and I could be heard, and I haven't seen anybody tell me that you can hear me. So I'm assuming you can. I see Firelight and Tist laughed, I guess, when I said I was sitting here talking to myself for a while. So yeah, if one of you all can just tell me that you can hear me and that I'm clear, I would appreciate that. And then I'll move forward. All right. And I know there's a slight delay from what I'm saying to when you all hear it. All right. So and I see Jerome Lockhart pressing 1, so I guess that means you can hear me. I'm gonna assume that, but I just wish somebody to say yes, I can hear you. We can get that going. So let me just do a quick recap. So this is what we're discussing. So let me go back. So what this is a part 2 of is that we're having a discussion and a review of Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop's article, that's in the General History of Africa, Volume 2, Ancient Civilizations of Africa. All right. And he has an article in there, and the title of the article is The Origin of the Ancient Egyptians. But then there's a specific section called The Egyptians as They Saw Themselves. And so that's what we've been discussing. So that's what we've been discussing from part 1. And so tonight we're going to move forward and continue with that discussion. All right. So, all right. Now I see that people said that they can hear me. All right. Appreciate it. Now, remember, once I give a little bit of commentary and I'm going to do some reading, if you have questions, by all means, ask your question. So, reserve it for now if you can, or remember it, or document it, write it down, or whatever the case is. And then I'll pay back attention to the chat. All right. So let me move forward. Don't want to delay any longer. All right. So give me a second here. Okay. So we're discussing the origins of the ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians as they saw themselves, by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. All right. Now, first, I do want to let everyone know that the Shemsu Heru research team, which includes myself, the brother Sanjeti, and the brother Osari Imhotep, we've gathered a few essays. We've done a few essays as a complement to the recent ASCAC annual conference that took place in April. And so at these conferences, you are allowed, if you're, invited to present, you're allowed approximately 20 minutes or so. That's usually the average time that they give you. And so in 20 minutes time, there's not enough time in 20 minutes to really talk about much on certain issues and certain topics. 20 minutes is good if you're presenting something that is not too in-depth or not too complex. But otherwise, 20 minutes is really just enough time for you to kind of introduce the audience to a larger work. You're just giving some bullet points, a few things here and there, because before you know it, 20 minutes is over at the blink of an eye. Okay. And so knowing that, what we did is we wrote essays for the audience, or for the people that will complement the presentations at the ASCAC conference. And so we collected those essays and we published them. And that's what you're seeing on the screen is our published work, which is entitled A Contribution to the Debate on the Meaning of the Place Name Kemet. Now, all of these essays in here, matter of fact, the book is about 100 pages in terms of how many pages big it is. All of these essays are still a preliminary to a larger work. So we're working on a complete book and we project it to be out sometime in the summer. We're going to make sure we stay at it. But the larger work will deal with every single aspect of this question on the meaning of the place name Kemet. We're going to cover all areas and leave no stone unturned. All right. We're going to dot all of our I's, cross all of our T's, and we're going to address every single thing that has, come up in conversations, debates, arguments, the sharing of information, etc. over decades. We're going to address it all in a larger work. Okay. So these essays in this text that you see, they're still a prelude, but it's enough to complement the presentations, and it will definitely put you in the right frame of mind for this particular topic. All right. So make sure you go pick it up. It's available on Amazon, by the way. This text is available on Amazon. And if you don't have it, shame on you. All right. But definitely go get it. And if you do have it, we are allowing a little bit of time to go by for people to get it and to read it, digest it a bit. And we're going to have a Q&A on this text. Okay. Myself, Sanjeti, and Osari Imhotep, we're going to do a live Q&A for those who have purchased the book and have questions, have, feedback questions, critique, whatever the case is. All right. We're going to open it up and do that. So we haven't set a date for that, but be on the lookout for that. All right. And so here it is. It's available on Amazon. So here's a couple of people that have already purchased it. and have it. So I'm definitely expecting everyone that you see in the picture and some others to definitely be in the building when we do a live Q&A. All right. Because our job is to teach. Our job is to edify and educate people. So we want people to engage in this conversation, to engage the information. And so the interaction will allow clarity to disambiguate different things that may be obscure to people, and so on and so forth. All right. So anyway, it's available on Amazon and you can get it. All right. Okay. So now with that out of the way, I want to do a quick review. So this is the article that we have been discussing in part 1. All right. And let me just make sure. Okay, so everyone can see it. So this is it. And this is in the book. This book here. The General History of Africa, Ancient Civilizations. So in this particular text is what you're looking at, all right? And like I said, I think the brother Real G's TV posted a link so that people can click on that and get this particular book. All right. So this is the article. So this is the section, the Egyptians as they saw themselves. And so just do a quick review because we discussed this portion last week. So just as a quick review, the opening paragraph sets the stage for this section of the article. Okay. And so I'll just read the opening paragraph again. It says, "It is of no waste of time to get the views of those principally concerned. How did the ancient Egyptians see themselves?" That's a question. "Into which ethnic category did they put themselves?" Another question. "What did they call themselves?" Third question. And then he goes on to say, "The language and literature left to us by the Egyptians in the pharaonic epic supply explicit answers to these questions, which the scholars cannot refrain from minimizing, twisting, or interpreting." Okay, so that paragraph sets the stage for this entire section. So those questions are important, and then he makes the statement and says that the literature and the language itself supplies us with these answers. All right, and so we discussed that last week. And so just as a quick review, the next sentence says the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, which is Kemet, in that form that you see there, which he says equals Negroes, literally. And we have to understand in French, Negro or Negro in Spanish is the word for black. Okay. So he said the Negroes or the blacks, literally. And then it goes on to say this is the strongest term existing in the pharaonic tongue that indicates blackness. It is accordingly written with the hieroglyph representing the length of wood charred at the end and not with crocodile scales. All right. So we discussed all of this last week, and I don't want to fully repeat everything, but we understand that that statement is incorrect. All right. And we went over that last week, that the Egyptians did not have one term to designate themselves. And we brought up the term Remich. Okay. The Egyptians referred to themselves as Remich. They didn't call themselves the Egyptians. I think everybody's definitely aware of that. But what they did call themselves was Remich. And it simply means the people. And a lot of indigenous cultures will call themselves a term that would translate to us in English as the people. That's how, kind of general their designation or that they refer to themselves as the people. All right. So the word Remich is what they used. All right. So we discussed that. So I'm going to skip and pick up from where we left off. All right. Let me get my cursor over here. Okay. So we discussed that. And then what I did last week was I went through this particular question. How did the Egyptians see themselves? And again, go back and watch part 1, because what I did was I showed pictures from several dynasties, walking from the 3rd dynasty all the way up forward to the Ptolemaic era of time. And the reason why that's important is because when you ask this question, how did the Egyptians see themselves? The answer to that is in how the Egyptians depicted themselves to the rest of the world in their art. Okay, and so there's a plethora of tombs, stelae, um, temple walls, everything where the scribes for over 3,000 years, they had a canon or standardized way of depicting themselves. And so what I did, I walked through the different dynasties and showed various different images to let everyone know from their perspective how they wanted the world to see them. And basically the takeaway from that was that the Egyptians used the pigment of a reddish brown or tawny or brownish reddish brown pigment to indicate or express how they looked or their skin and so on and so forth, and not black. You see the hair and all these different pictures, that's black, but their skin was not black. Now, last week when we were saying this, one person in the chat was of the impression that when we say that, we're saying that the ancient Egyptians were not black people. Now, we have to be very clear with that. We're not saying that, but we have to be clear with what people mean when it's said, okay? First of all, no one is literally the color black. And so those of us today who call ourselves blacks, like we say we're black, I'm a black man, black woman, black man, that is a modern concept. That is a modern social construct. That is a modern thing. That concept that we go by today did not exist historically or in ancient times. All right, at all. Okay, so we're not saying that the ancient Egyptians, if the ancient Egyptians could go through a time capsule, a time travel, and pop up here today, they would be called black people, as we call ourselves today. But we don't mean that literally. We are using it as a social construct. All right. And that's a whole nother conversation about the modern social construct that maybe we'll have another time. All right. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because somebody made a comment in the chat as if we're saying that the Egyptians were not black, because technically they're not. Black as a designation for people, that social construct is modern. All right. So just want to make sure I make that clear. The Egyptians were African people. The Egyptians would be called black people today. All right. So I want to make those disclaimers. All right. So, but what I did, I showed that they depicted themselves not as black, the color. They depicted themselves as red, brown. All right. So that's what I did. And then into which ethnic category did they put themselves? And what did they call themselves? Okay, so those are three questions that we always have in mind when we're walking through this. All right, so going down, and we go down to the next point here. We left off really here, and it says the biblical root Cam is probably derived from it, speaking about the word Kim, all right, or Kemet. And it has therefore been necessary to distort the facts to enable this root today to mean white in Egyptological terms, whereas in the Pharaonic mother tongue, which gave it birth, it meant coal black. All right, so there's really nothing to really say about that, except that the word Ham or Cam, it does not mean white, and no one, at least in recent times, makes that claim that Cam means white. Okay, so when he says that it enables this root today to mean white, that is not something that is done in the intellectual circles. People refer to Ham meaning white or anything of that nature. All right. So, but there's not too much more to really say about that. So going on to the next portion, it goes on to say, in the Egyptian language, a word of assembly is formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in the feminine singular. All right, so I want to pause here because it is from this sentence that, as of late in the past few months, you have people that will discuss or attempt to discuss this quote unquote feminine T rule. And if you're familiar with the conversation, at least on Facebook, you've seen people say this, or you've maybe watched other videos where people are making the claim about this thing called a feminine T rule. And so where they're getting that from is this particular text. All right. And we've done videos that address that specifically, so I won't go into too much detail, but in the gist of it, what this sentence is talking about, it says in the Egyptian language, a word of assembly. When it says a word of assembly, it's talking about a collective. All right, a collective. And so it's saying that a collective is formed from an adjective or noun by putting it in the feminine singular. All right. Now, this statement here, this whole statement is not true. All right. It's partly true, but it's not true in and of itself. And the reason why is because collective words can also exist in the masculine. All right. So I'm just going to show you one real quick. Give me 1 second here. Let's see if I have one to show you all quickly. All right, I thought I had one to show very quickly. All right, here we are. Okay, so you all should be able to see it on the screen. So what I have on the screen are two collective substantives. All right. Now, just real quick as a side note, and I hope you all have paper and pen near you, or you have your notepad open and you're taking notes. Because if you have any questions, I'm going to definitely check out questions that anybody have any questions and type it out. So I'm going to try to explain some things, but again, I'm being concise, and we go into detail, in our classes. So if you're interested in actually learning this stuff, I will give information at the end about classes, how you can sign up and everything. But we also have videos, and we have a Facebook group, Sesh Medew Netcher, that you could join. All right. So briefly, as a side note, well, let me just explain this first. That what we see here is on the left hand side, we have the word masha or masha, which means the troop or the army, and this is a masculine collective substantive. Now, as a side note, what I was going to say is that you will hear me say substantive, and you'll hear other scholars use substantive preferred over the word noun. But for all intent and purposes, when I say substantive, you can equate that with a noun. But it's dangerous to do that when you're actually probing and being very detailed within the grammar of ancient Egyptian, or what we refer to as Rani Kemet. All right. But in any other circumstance or situation, if you said noun, then that wouldn't create any problems. But with this particular language and a few others, we have to be very, very precise. All right. And so you'll hear me say substantive. And the reason why is because a noun, there are two types of nouns. And let me just show that real quick. All right, there are two types of nouns. So let me just put noun up here, just real very quickly here. All right, so we have a noun. Now, briefly, the noun comes from the Latin nomen. All right, and so when early grammarians were labeling and classifying different parts of speech and different aspects of grammar, which is morphology and syntax, they came up with, these terms and these labels to identify the differences and distinctions in the phenomenon, the linguistic phenomenon that's going on that you can observe. All right. So in Latin, a noun is nomen. And so what we have, though, we have two types of these. So there's two types of nouns. So one type is called a substantive. And the other type is one that everyone's familiar with, is the adjective. Okay? So we have two types of noun, a substantive and an adjective. But now to us in English, the way we learn in school, it sounds weird to call an adjective a noun, because what happens is in our school and the way we're taught, the word substantive is replaced with the word noun. And by doing that, you lose this hierarchy. So noun is the umbrella term for these two types. So there's two types of nouns, but the way we're taught in school, we learn about a part of speech called nouns, and then we learn about adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, etc., etc. And so it's weird to call an adjective a noun, but an adjective is a noun. And what we're calling a noun is really a substantive. Okay? So nouns break down into two types, a substantive and an adjective. And in Latin, they were called adjectivum, nomen adjectivum, and then substantivum nomen, or nomen substantivum. So you have a noun substantive and you have a noun adjective. Okay? That's the reason. And so we have to be this precise when we're discussing the grammar and things of the language. All right? So that was a side note that I wanted to share with you all. But let me go back to the text. All right. Well, let me show this again where I left off. So on the left-hand side, we have the word masha or masha, which is the word for army. Now, this is a collective. This is called a collective substantive. And it's treated, a collective is a word that's treated in the singular, but it's representing a multitude of things or people, etc. So we know that an army has a lot of soldiers in it, but we refer to the whole as one unit. And so that's a masculine. And so on the right hand side, we have a feminine word, menmenet, which means the herd, a herd of cattle. So it's treated singular. It's grammatically gender is feminine, but it is a collective. So it's referring to many things as one. And that's what a collective is. It's when you refer to many things as one unit. Okay. So I'm just showing y'all that collectives do exist in the feminine and in the masculine. All right. Masha is masculine and menmenet is feminine. All right. So I just wanted to show that this first sentence here in this text, this is why I say it is partly right, but as a whole is incorrect. Okay. So collectives or word of assembly formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in the feminine singular. All right. So hopefully that will straighten that out for you all. So to go on, the word kemet, from the adjective kem, that means black, it therefore means strictly Negroes or blacks, or at the very least black men. Okay, so this is a statement. So he's saying kemet from the adjective kem equals black. It therefore means strictly Negroes or at the very least black men. So what it's saying here, because prior to it, he says that a word of assembly, a collective, is formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in the feminine singular. So what he's saying is that in this case, an adjective, kem, meaning black, is put in the feminine singular to form a word of assembly, which is a collective. And so this is why he's saying, therefore, it strictly means Negroes, plural, or blacks, or black men, plural, or group, black men in the collective. All right. So that's the claim. And this is where everyone is getting this idea from this particular section of this article. All right. Now, I do want to back up and repeat something I said last week. When we come up here at the beginning of the article, it says the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves. Notice the footnote number 44. And if we scroll down and read footnote 44, it says this important discovery was made on the African side by Sosu Nsugen, who was to compile this part of the present chapter. All right. So I pointed that out last week because apparently this section or this portion of Diop's entire article or entire chapter, this portion was supposed to be written by someone else. And he gives the person's name here, but it appears that the person didn't do it because he said who was to compile this part of the present chapter. So that would imply that the person didn't do it, and so but Diop is using the information. Okay, so he's giving credit to a different person. So mixed in here, we don't know what Diop did in and of himself, or this person that he mentioned who did not complete the task of writing this this section. All right, so I pointed that out last week just to give some backdrop of this whole article. All right, and so let's see where I leave off here. Okay, so therefore means black nigga. Okay, now it says the term is a collective noun. This is what I said, which thus described the whole people of Pharaonic Egypt as black people. All right, now we always have to keep in mind that this statement here is an assumption, because this kemet here from the adjective kem, black, is an assumption that that's the word that was used to form the word kemet, and that'll make more sense in a little bit. So just put a tack in that in your mind, and we're going to come back to that. So it goes on to say, in other words, on the purely grammatical plane, if one wishes to indicate blacks or Negroes in the Pharaonic tongue, one cannot use any other word than the very one the Egyptians used for themselves. Furthermore, the language offers us another term, Medew, and you see it drawn here in the glyphs, and he says it equals the Negroes or the blacks, or the black men literally, equaling the Egyptians as opposed to foreigners, which comes from the same root, kem, and which the Egyptians also used to describe themselves as a people distinguished from all foreign peoples. All right, and we have the footnotes. This word coming from the Order book, their Egyptian Sprach, which is the German, a very, very extensive German Egyptian dictionary. All right, it's probably the biggest dictionary we have to date of Egyptian terms. All right, so that's where that's coming from in terms of the word itself. All right, so now what we should understand here is, first of all, we have to examine what's being said here. So he says that on a purely grammatical plane, if a person wishes to indicate blacks in the Pharaonic tongue, one cannot use any other word than the very one that the Egyptians used for themselves. So pause right here. Now, here is, so let me explain a little bit about what the problem is and why I say this. There's an assumption. So let me go over here and let's see if I can pull this back up. All right, I want to draw your attention to something here, and let me see if I can get my screen switched over fast enough. All right, so what you're looking at on the screen, this is from a previous lesson or video that I did before, but it applies to what I'm saying here now. So what you're looking at here on the screen now are 6 words. Okay, now all 6 of these words, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all 6 of these words are transliterated exactly the same. You have a P, R, and a T, PRT, PRT, etc. all 6 of them would be transliterated the exact same. Okay. And for today's conventional pronunciations, all 6 of these words will be pronounced the same. Now, just as a side note, when you hear people pronounce these ancient Egyptian words, no one makes the claim. Well, I could say no, there's no scholars out here that makes the claim that today's pronunciations are meant to be historically accurate. So no one's walking around saying the way we pronounce these words is the exact same way the ancient Egyptians pronounced the words in ancient times. Okay, so it's only done by convention. And the reason why that is because in the Sesh Medew Netcher, which people refer to as hieroglyphs, there are no vowels documented. So what scholars have done in order to discuss the language and to have a tentative pronunciation, they just stick an E in between all the consonants. So this word would be pronounced peret. All 6 of these would be pronounced the same. Peret, peret, peret. Okay? So, but now ancient Egyptians may have pronounced it differently because obviously they knew the vowels and so on and so forth. All right? So I just want to make that clear. All right? So today, all 6 of these words will be transliterated identically and pronounced identically, the same. Peret, 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 peret. All right? Now, but there's 6 different words. So what separates each of these words to let us know which of these words we're talking about is another glyph that's added on to the word. So just for clarity, the first 3 glyphs are spelling out this word peret. So you have glyph 1 here, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. They're all the same. 1, 2, 3. Although they're arranged a little differently, but these are the first, second, and third glyphs. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You see it in all 6 of these words. So outside of these 3 glyphs, these first 3 glyphs, the glyphs that come after that are what most people refer to as determinatives. And these glyphs are called determinatives. They're not transliterated and they're not spoken. They're not pronounced at all. Okay. And so although you're seeing different determinatives in the glyphs, notice that they're all 6 of them are transliterated the same. And the reason why is because the determinatives are not transliterated. They're mute. And so these glyphs only serve a purpose visually when reading, not when speaking. Okay, so determinatives is an orthographic feature of the language, meaning writing, something in writing. Now, so the distinctions are made by these determinatives. So you have determinative of legs in motion. So this word peret means procession. It means people marching or some marching, some movement. Okay. This peret with the walking legs and 3 strokes is peret, which means to rise. Okay. Or to come forth, come out of something. All right. The next one with the phallus and 3 pebbles or what have you, it is the word, makes a different word for progeny. All right. This word here with the sun disk and a dot in the middle is a glyph that has to do with time. And so this word peret deals with a time of the year, which is the growing season, the season of peret. Okay. The next one is a, what do you call it? A cedar or a plow. And you have 3 seeds here. And so this peret means fruit. Then you have a squatting woman as a determinative. This peret would mean maiden of the house. All right. So without these determinatives, we would be totally at a loss for which word is meant or indicated. Now, why do I bring this up? Because let me go back to the text. So when the statements are made, and this goes for anyone making statements like this. And so this is why we say that this is an assumption, because it says that this particular kemet is from the adjective kem, that means black. But to this very date, up until recently, no scholar has ever done the work to find out which kem in the word kemet is applicable. And the reason why that is because there are several words that are transliterated as km or kim. There is one that is an adjective, kim, that means black. But there's another one that means to be completed, to complete something. Kim, to complete. There's also a kim, to make a payment or to pay someone at the completion of their work or whatever the case is, to pay them. There's a kim that means to complain. So there are several different words that use these same glyphs. The I6, which some people call it a charcoal, some people call it a crocodile tail. Regardless of what you call it, this I6 glyph and the owl. There are several words that use these two glyphs in combination, and we transliterate it as kim. So the question becomes, what method was used in order to determine that the kim in the word Kemet, in terms of the name of the kingdom, ancient Kemet, what method was used to determine which one of those was used as the root to form that word, if any? And so that's a very important question, and it was never taken to task by any scholar ever until recently. Okay, and this is the work that we're doing collectively, myself, Asar Motep, and the brother Sanjeti. Okay, and it is very detailed and very in depth. But I wanted to point that out of why we say that this is an assumption, because it says it outright here. It says furthermore, the language offers us another term, Kemetiu, the Negroes or the black men, literally the Egyptians, as opposed to foreigners, which comes from the same root, Kem. But nothing was demonstrated to show that that's the truth, that it came from that root or this particular root for blackness or for the word black. The work was never done. All right. So I just want to point that out and why we say, assumption and so on and so forth. All right. All right. But now let's get into this Kemetiu real quick. This particular word Kemetiu is referred to as a nisba or nisbi. Okay, Kemetiu. And so let me share my screen. Give me a second here. And again, right now, I apologize. I am not looking at the chat. So if you all have any questions or any comments right now, again, I apologize. I'm not looking at them right now, but I will. Okay, so don't think I'm ignoring you. All right, so now I've done a full video on this before, but again, for this video, I'm just going to give a very brief summary. So on your screen, you have a couple of words. At the top, we have onomastics. Onomastics is the general study of names, period. Okay, names. And under that study, we have different kinds of names. And just to be brief, we have toponyms, demonyms, and we have all kinds of anthroponyms. So we have ethnonyms that fall into that, endonymic ethnonyms and exonymic ethnonyms that you see here. Then we have eponyms. So when we say words like Kemetiu, well, let me just explain what a toponym. A toponym in gist is a place name. Okay, that's a Greek way of saying place name, topos and onym. Topos meaning place and onym meaning name. All right, so place name. Now, under that, we have different kinds of places. So we have, water locations, mountainous locations, and so on. So we have hydronyms and oronyms, which fall under toponyms. So a hydronymic toponym would be something like the Atlantic Ocean. An oronymic toponym would be something like the Appalachian Mountains. Okay, so if I call the mountains the Appalachian Mountains, that would be an oronym. Okay, so just to give you a quick explanation of that. Demonyms. Now, demonyms are formed from toponyms because what a demonym is, it's a word that relates a people to a place. And so demonyms are the names of a people who reside or who originate from a particular place. And so let me just show you a couple of these demonyms. So a toponym like Jamaica, that's a place. You can see it on the map. It's in the Caribbeans, south of Florida, Gulf of Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. And when you want to refer to people who live there or who are from there, we call them Jamaicans. Okay? So the demonym would be Jamaican and the toponym would be Jamaica. Likewise, Mexico becomes Mexicans or Mexican. America, Americans. Canada, Canadian. India, Indians. Russia, Russian. Australia, Australian. Africa as a whole continent, African. Europe as a whole continent, European. Asia as a whole continent, Asian. So if you notice that these are places, and then this is how you refer to a person or a thing that lives there, reside there, or originates from there. And these are called demonyms. So the question is, now notice in English, we form most of our demonyms by adding an on it or ian, etc., etc. Okay? Now, all of this is explained in the essay, the book. So if you get the book, which I encourage everyone to do, all of this is explained. Again, we're going to have a Q&A on all of this. But I'm just giving it to you all, a bit of it for the sake of this particular video. But in English, we add an, ian, etc. on the end of these toponyms to convert them over to demonyms. Now, when we do the same thing in Egyptian, when we want to express the same phenomenon, what we do, we convert the toponym into what's called a nisbi. Okay, so for example, we have over here, we have the word duat. Duat is a place. It's the afterlife, the underworld, whatever, people would like to refer to it as. It's a place, the duat. Now, if I want to refer to people who live there or reside there or from there, I would say duat to you. And that's what we see here. Duat to you. And it means the inhabitants of the duat, or those pertaining to the duat. This is a plural, a masculine plural. Duat to you. Here's another place, Irim. This is a place that is south of Kemet, northern what people call Nubia. This is a place, location, Irim. If I want to refer to the people there, I refer to them as Irim to you, which means the inhabitants of Irim. Okay, so likewise, we have Amenet or Ament, which is the word for the West. If I want to talk about people who live in the West or reside there or from there, I would say Ament to you. That's what you see here. And lastly, we have Aket, which is a place. People call it the horizon. And the people who dwell there or from there or reside there, etc., we will call them Aket to you. That's what you see on the right. So these are toponyms, and these are what's called nisbis, or more technical term, these are called derived adjectives or relational adjectives. All right. The nickname for them are nisbis. So keep that in mind. All right. So that's how it's done in Rodney Kemet or ancient Egyptian. So when you see this word Kemetiu, now look at this word here on the top of the screen, and I'm going to switch back over to the text so you can see that we're dealing with the same word. This is the same word that's pointed out, oh, my cursor is right here, in the text that's being used. So we have Kemetiu. All right. So I'm going to go back. Where we at? Okay, so Kemetiu. Now, what this word actually means, it means those of Kemet. It doesn't mean blacks. Because as I said, when we deal with a relational adjective, well, let me just read so that everyone's clear. In Rodney Kemet, or the Rodney Kemet word Kemetiu, is a masculine plural relational adjective, nicknamed Nisbi. Relational adjectives are derived from either substantives, what most people call nouns, or prepositions. In the substantival form, the original substantive can be either masculine or feminine. Regardless of the gender of the original substantive, The resulting relational adjective will have a full set of adjectival endings expressing gender and number. And again, we go into depth about this. So if this may seem a little confusing, I'll point you to a video where we kind of go in depth in this. And obviously, you could definitely take the classes. But to continue, the meaning of relational adjectives indicate a relation with the term from which they are derived. That's why we call them relational adjectives. Okay, so again, the meaning of relational adjectives indicate a relation with the term from which they're derived. So in the singular, we would say something like the one from or the one who pertains to. In the plural, we say the ones or those from or those or ones pertaining to. Okay, so in our case, the word Medew, the meaning is those which are from or those pertaining to Kemet. It doesn't change the word that it's derived from. It simply establishes a relationship. And so a similar example with Har Aketi, which is Heru of the horizon. The word Aketi is a masculine singular relational adjective derived from the substantive Aket, horizon. And horizon is a toponym. So we have Aket is a place, a location, and then Heru residing there or from there, we say Aketi, one who pertains to the Aket. It's not that Heru is the Aket. It's not describing Heru as the Aket. Likewise, Kemet is not describing something as Kim. It is establishing a relationship with Kim or Kemet. Okay, so I want to make that distinction. So when people say that, let me go back to the text. So this statement here, my cursor at this statement here, that Kemetiu means the Negroes or the blacks, literally the Egyptians, as opposed to foreigners, which comes from the same root, etc., etc. This statement is wrong. The first part, it doesn't mean blacks. All right. Now, the reason why scholars translate this as Egyptians is because it is a demonym. It's talking about people related to Kemet, which is a place. So it's like saying those pertaining to that place. It's not describing their skin or that they're black or anything like that. It's just establishing a people and a location and a place. So to translate it as Egyptians would be appropriate, as long as Kemet is speaking about Egypt. It's those pertaining to Egypt, which we would say Egyptians. Just like I did earlier, those pertaining to Canada, we simply call them Canadians. Those pertaining to Mexico, we simply call them Mexicans. Those pertaining to India, Indians, etc., etc. Okay? And they are distinct from foreign people. So the second part is correct. And see, this is where the confusion comes in, because it is a mixture of accurate statements and then some things that are not correct. So it says, as opposed to foreigners, which comes from the same root Kim, and which Egyptologists also use to describe themselves as people as distinguished from all foreign peoples. All right. So it's coming from the word Kemet, a feminine toponym, a location. Kemetiu takes that feminine substantive, which is a toponym, and it converts it into a masculine plural relational adjective called a Nisbi. That's what is occurring. All right. And if we understand what Nisbis do and what Nisbis are used for, they're not used in the sense that it's being claimed here to say that it means black. Because likewise, if I were to go back to what I was just now showing you all, if I go back here, then that means that these people are being described as the duat itself. Like these people are the duat itself. These people are Iram itself. These people here are the West. And that's just not true. It simply establishes a relationship, a connection between people and a location. Westerners Aketians, Edomites, or Duatiites. You know, we in English we would say it all kinds of ways, but it still establishes a relationship. Just like I said, Jamaican from Jamaica. All right. So that I don't want to dwell too much on that. Hopefully that's understood. And again, I can't see y'all's comments just yet, but if you have any questions about that, I will take them up in a few minutes. All right. But let me continue. I want to get a little further along, and I'm not going to be too long, but I want to get through some more. Okay, so to continue, we're going to go into the next page. It says, these are the only adjectives of nationality used by the Egyptians to designate themselves, and both mean Negro or black in the Pharaonic language. The first part of the statement is absolutely correct. The last part is incorrect. All right. Nationality. Demonyms are used to designate nationality. If I want to call somebody who has a nationality from Canada, I will call them a Canadian. A person who is a national of Jamaica, we say a Jamaican. And China, Chinese. India, Indian. You know, Kenya, Kenyan, etc., etc., etc. So for Egypt, the nationality would be Medew. Kemet being the name of the country or the kingdom. And then those who are nationals of that kingdom will be called Medew. All right. That's all the word means. It establishes a relationship. Okay. It does not extend and mean black or describing them and so on. All right. So just want to point that out. So to continue, scholars hardly ever mention them. And when they do, it is to translate them by euphemisms such as Egyptians. And I just explained that the Egyptians would be appropriate, just like I said, Americans or Canadians, while remaining completely silent about their etymological sense. Now, this statement, this part, is true for everyone. No one actually researched the etymology of the Kim in the word Kemet to figure out which one and so on and so forth. No one has done that until recently. Now, they prefer the expression Remich Kemet. And you see this here. And he says that it equals the men of the country of the black men. So he's saying that Remich Kemet means the men of the country of the black men. Now that doesn't make too much sense in English like that. The men of the country of black men, or the men of the black country. Now notice that he says they prefer. Who's they? Scholars. Okay, so we're gonna do some basic English parsing of the paragraph. So scholars hardly ever mention them, and when they do, they talking about scholars. So when he says they prefer, he's talking about scholars. Scholars prefer the expression Remich Kemet. But no scholar defines Remich Kemet in this manner right here that I have highlighted. The men of the country of black men. Scholars don't do that. But scholars do translate it this way. The men of the black country. All right. This first one, scholars don't do it. The second one, scholars do it that way. And you're gonna see that Diop acknowledges that in a second, right down here. So let's go forward. In Egyptian, words are normally followed by a determinative, and I just now showed you all examples, which indicates their exact sense. And for this particular expression, Egyptologists suggest Kim equaling black, and that the color qualifies the determinative which follows it and which signifies country. Accordingly, they claim the translation should be the black earth from the color of the loam or the black country, and not the country of the black men. So now he says scholars say it shouldn't be the country of the black men. But up here, he says they prefer the expression Remich, which equals the men of the country of the black men. So later he's acknowledging that this portion is something he added, and this is what they normally do, men of the black country, because he's saying it here that scholars will say black country and not the country of the black men, as we should be inclined to render it today with black Africa and white Africa in mind. Okay, so I'm just pointing things out and walking through this slowly so people can understand what is here. And it's because of this that a lot of people are confused on the issue, because this heart of it, this is the source of the conversation, coming back to this particular article and sentiments of our late and great Cheikh Anta Diop, that this in and of itself is not very clear. Okay, and there's some problems with it. And so therefore everybody who proceeds from this is going to have the same problems. They're handicapped. They're going to deal with the same issues. So now let's move on, and I'm going to end at the bottom of this paragraph. So this will be the last thing. So after saying all of this, he goes on to say, perhaps so. All right. Now let me show you all quickly if I can have a picture of it. Do I have a picture here? I should. All right, let's see if I could get one real quick. Okay. I want to show this on the screen while I say what I'm saying. Okay, so now when he said in the text that I just read, when he says that Egyptologists suggest that Kim means black, and that the color qualifies the determinative which follows it and which signifies country, he's talking about these determinatives here that you see on the screen. For those who are familiar with the Gardner Code, this is 049. All right. Both of these have 049. This first one has an irrigation channel, N23, Gardner Code N23. Okay. So he's saying that scholars will say Kim in here means black. And because the determinative signifies a location, a toponym, then he's saying that the scholars suggest that Kemet means black and then the country, black country, because it is determinative. So what Diop does, first let's read it. I'm going to come back to this. So I'm going to read it and we're going to come right back. And it should make sense. So he says, perhaps so. So what I just showed you is that Kim, scholars are saying Kim and Kemet means black, and that the 049, that determinative indicates a city, a location, a country, etc. So therefore, together it means black country. And so Diop is saying, okay, scholars, perhaps so. But if we apply this rule, and see, here's where people get this idea of a rule. But what Diop is talking about, he's not talking about a rule. He's talking about logic. So replace this rule with the word logic. He's saying perhaps so. But if we apply this logic rigorously to this rendition of Kemet, of a word that we would transliterate as Kemet, we are forced to concede that here the adjective black, which would be Kim, qualifies the determinative, which signifies the whole people of Egypt, shown by the two symbols for man and a woman, and then the three strokes below them, which indicate the plural. Thus, if it is possible to voice a doubt in regards to this form of the word Kemet, it is not possible to do so in the case of the two adjectives of nationality, which is this form, and then the Kemetiu form that we showed earlier, which is right here. Okay? So let's kind of unpack what was just said. So I'm gonna go back to my screen here, and I'm gonna explain what Diop is actually doing, which, according to what I just read. Get my screen back on over here. Okay, so what Diop is saying is that scholars will take these three renditions of the word Kemet, because mind you, matter of fact, let me For clarification purposes, let me put this under here as well. All right. All three of these words are transliterated identically. Kemet, 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 Kemet. But are all these words the same? Okay, that's the question. The answer is no. Just to give you an answer. But so these three here, Diop is saying that scholars will translate these three words here as black country. Black country, black country, black country. Why? Because Kim scholars are saying Kim is the adjective black. And then this determinative that you see, these determinatives indicate a location, a country, a city, a village, a settlement, etc., etc. So if you put all that together, then it's saying black settlement or black country or black village, etc., etc. So Diop is saying, okay, Mr. Scholar, if that's what you all are going to say and that's your logic, then let's apply the same logic rigorously to this rendition. So this is where it says apply this rule, but what's meant is logic, okay, because there's no rule. But he's saying, okay, I'm going to apply your logic, Mr. Scholar. Let's apply it to this word. So here we have Kim again, okay, or Kemet. We got the raised bread loaf, Kemet. But instead of a city or a town or a village determinative, now we have people. We got a man and a woman and three strokes. So if this means black, then this must mean people. So therefore you put it together, black people. Kemet means black people. That's where the root and heart of all of the confusion is coming from. So what Diop is doing essentially is he's taking the European assumption that the Kim in the word Kemet is black in the first place. And let me say this, I'm gonna put it right here. No scholar, spell it out. There is no scholar that has ever made a determination that the Kim in the word Kemet is indeed the adjective black. No scholar has ever made that determination. They all assume, and I'm talking about these early Egyptologists all the way up until today, they made the assumption that Kim and Kemet is the Kim that means black. And so Diop is saying, okay, Mr. Scholar, since that's what you all are going to say, and that's what y'all been saying, that Kim means black and this means country, so therefore black country, and you're talking about the flooding of the Nile and the soot that's left behind, or the loam that's left behind when it recedes, okay, fine, Mr. Scholar, but now what about this one? You can't get away with that on this one, because by your logic, this means black and this is people, so therefore it means black people. So if no scholar determined that this is black in the word Kemet, then likewise, Diop is actually borrowing the Europeans' logic, faulty logic, or undemonstrated or unconfirmed logic, and applying it for this particular term, and everyone is running with it. That is the heart of the problem of why this is even being debated to this very day. All based on an assumption. Okay, I just want to make that clear. All right, and I'm going to, kind of wind it down and close out with that. And I'll continue in another video and pick up from here because I want to make these, like I said, manageable videos. But I want to leave that on your mind, on you all's mind, that this is where it's coming from. Let me go back to the text because now that I said that, let's go to the text and read it because I don't want anyone to feel that I'm putting words in in the text or reading too much into it, et cetera, et cetera. So let me go back to it. With that in mind, let's read. So I'm going to go back to the paragraph. It says, in Egyptian, words are normally followed by a determinative which indicates their exact sense. And for this particular expression, Egyptologists suggest that the Kim means black and that the color of black qualifies the determinative which follows it. And that determinative happens to be, or which signifies country. Okay. Accordingly, scholars, they claim the translation should be the black earth, from the color of the loom or the black country, and not the country of the black men. All right. So, and he says, as we should be inclined to render it today with black Africa and white Africa in mind. So now he's conceding. He says, perhaps so. But if we apply this rule, remember I said change the word rule to logic. If we apply this logic rigorously to this rendition, then we are forced to concede that here the adjective black qualifies the determinative like the other one. It signifies the whole people of Egypt, shown as the two symbols of a man and woman, and the three strokes below them to indicate plural. Thus, if it's possible to have doubt about this one, you can't be in doubt about this one. That's the root of the entire argument, or what people are basing their arguments on. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. All right, and I wanted to show you all this. I should have shown it first, but let me go back. I want to read you all something. Because, and I always like to do this because, a lot of people in our circles are very, very hyper emotional or hypersensitive. And we've been accused of slandering Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. All right. If you're not familiar with that, then no worries. But we've been accused of slandering or digging him out of his grave just to slander and make a name and all kinds of crazy accusations. So what I like to do is read this from Cheikh Anta Diop himself to let everyone know who feels that way that they shouldn't feel that way, and for them to listen to our late and great elder himself. So this is Diop. This is coming from an interview that Diop did in 1974. Okay. And so he was asked the question, what sort of preparations should young scholars make to undertake future studies in the field of African studies? Okay, that was the question he was asked. And so he answers and says, I would like to see above all a greater number of researchers, Afro-Americans, young Americans, even whites. Why not? Because it's the young who are the least prejudiced. As a consequence, they are the most capable of making triumph ideas which frighten the older generation. Also, I think that it would be necessary to put together polyvalent scientific teams capable of doing in-depth studies for sure, and that's what's important. It bothers me when someone takes me on my word without developing a means to verify what I say. We must form a scientific spirit capable of seeing even the weaknesses of our own proofs, of seeing the unfinished side of our work, and of committing ourselves to completing it. You understand? Therefore, we should then have a work which could honestly stand criticism, because what we have done would have been placed on a scientific plane. Now, that's the words coming directly from Cheikh Anta Diop. So it bothers him, as he said, when people just take him for his word. All right. And so I just want to point that out to let everyone know that, we've been accused of going against Diop. And see, when people say that, they're appealing to emotions because people, when they fall short in terms of information and they don't have anything to bring to the table in terms of information, there's a tendency to violate logical fallacies, appeal to authority, appeal to emotions, and so on and so forth. So I want to nip that in the bud right away. All right. And here's an example of different forms of the word Kim, just to show you all some more forms. All right. So anyway, I just want to, kind of conclude there and now check out the chat. So if anybody had any comments or questions about anything that I said, then I'll be happy to address them. and answer them if I can. If I can't, I will let you know. So, um, so, the floor is open for questions. I'm gonna scroll back, even though I said hold them until now, but let me scroll back and I don't see any questions. So, all right, everybody's paying attention. All right. So, are there any questions? I don't see any. So let the questions fly, as they say. Let them fly. Let them fly. And I know there's a delay from what I say until you all hear what I say. So if you have any questions, okay, I'll tell you what. Because sometimes you may not have any questions, but give me some kind of indication that you all understand what I'm saying. That the things I'm saying are understood. So if you understand what I'm saying and it makes sense to you, press 1. Let me do the press 1. So if what I have said so far makes sense, press 1. If it doesn't make sense, then I look forward to your questions. All right, so let's make it easy. If it makes sense, press 1. Don't be shy. If it doesn't, then let's have the questions. All right, I'm opening it up. All right, Brother Omar says he understands. Christopher Withers, Big Dre, or Dre, understands. Chris has to be a little fancy. Say, Jimmy, I understand. Lisa understands. Who else? Let it roll out now. Because if it doesn't now, because I pride myself on teaching, clarifying, teaching, edifying, educating, so on and so forth. All right. I want to make sure that this is clear. I will take your question. I will make sure you understand what I'm saying. Because like I said, I'm trying to keep the video brief. So, I'm not going too far into details, but I can. All right. If anybody knows or familiar with me or have, taken a class with me, they know I will chart and diagram you to death. Okay. So, I'll wait a little while longer, but now while I'm waiting, I'll just show you all something else. Since people are going to be stingy with the questions, let me show you all something else. Now this gets into complicated grammar, but I'm going to uncomplicate it for you right now. All right, I just want to go over something with you. Hopefully I don't confuse anybody. So what you see on the screen is an example. Now, again, we did this last year. I did a whole presentation on this last year, and I also discussed this with students in the class, in the grammar classes. Here's an example of what's called a morphemic analysis. All right, and without getting too much into a morph and morpheme and stuff, I'm just gonna explain what you're seeing on the screen. So we have an Egyptian word or Iranian Kemet word, Sejem in F. Okay, Sejem in F. Now, this word is translated as he heard, past tense. Okay, Sejem means to hear or to listen, and then N would be the past tense and F would be the pronoun, third person masculine pronoun in the singular. So it's he heard. Now, the purpose of showing this is to do a morphemic, not a morphological analysis, but a morphemic analysis. And there's a difference. That's probably for another conversation. But so what I'm showing here is that what you see here underneath it on the morphemic level, we have several different morphemes. So, for example, the word Sejem, I said, means to hear. The N that you see here, which is the water ripple, it's a marker for past tense. So this is the surface expression or realization of the past tense morpheme. Okay, so Sejem are the first two glyphs. means to hear. The water ripple is past tense, and that's the realized marker for it that you see, N. And then this viper represents F, which is a third person masculine singular pronoun. Now, although you only see one glyph here, and we only transliterate it as an F, what that really represents is 3 morphemes. It represents third person, which you have 3P. It represents the gender, which is masculine. And it represents the number, which is singular. So these 3 morphemes, person, gender, and number. Person, gender, and number. Third person, masculine gender, singular in number. All 3 of these morphemes are represented by this one glyph. And so what this is called a portmanteau morpheme, or portmanteau morph. And what that means is that it's a combination or the combining of several different morphemes into one morph. The viper would be the morph that you see realized, and then under it, or what that represents, are several morphemes. So collectively, this is called a portmanteau morpheme. All right. Now, why am I showing this? Okay. Now, here's why I'm showing this. We're going to do the same thing for the place name Kemet, the name of the ancient kingdom that we all love and adore, ancient Kemet. What we're looking at is the word Kem, which are these first 2 glyphs. This Kem is not the adjective black. This particular Kem in the word Kemet represents the morpheme for wetness, riparianness, riparian or wetness. Okay. Then we have the bread loaf, or the T, which represents several morphemes. This will be the portmanteau aspect of it. Portmanteau morpheme. This one bread loaf, this one glyph, single glyph, it represents several different morphemes. So let's see, what does it represent? It represents singular, which is number. It represents gender, which is the feminine. And it represents the abstraction. We call it an abstract it. So this represents person, number, and gender. Person, number, gender. The gender is feminine. The number is singular. The person is the abstract it. The abstract it. And the abstract it is used for places. This is why most places in Rodney Kemet or in the Egyptian language have a bread loaf or are in the feminine, because this morph double or triples for all 3 of these situations. So it's talking about the place of wetness. Kemet means the place of wetness, but we don't say it that way. We simply say the riparian zone or the riparian country. All right. And for those who don't know what a riparian is, Google it and you're going to see pictures of a riparian. All this simply means is that land near water, land near a stream or river or some source of water, the land that is in the area of water. And that is what Kemet represents. That is what the Nile Valley is all about. That's why we call it the Nile Valley. Why don't we call it the Hill Valley? What is the Nile? The Nile is a river. So when we say the Nile Valley, just replace the word Nile with river. We're saying the river valley. If it's a river valley, it's a riparian. It's very, very simple. Very, very simple. All right. So I just wanted to say all that while I was trying to buy you all some time to ask questions, and I came back and I don't see any questions. We have one question. Omar Reed, Wujao, which consonants does the tethering rope represent? The tethering rope represents, well, let me pull up a blank and I'll delete this afterwards. Okay, so the tethering rope that you're referring to, we transliterate it as a capital T in the manual decodage transliteration system. capital T. We transliterate it in the diacritic system like so, the T with the line underneath. So both of these are valid transliterations for the tether rope that you're asking about. This one is manual decodage, which is case sensitive. This one is diacritic, where we have the different marks around the letter. So these are equivalent. Now, if you asking which consonants does it represent, I'm assuming that you're asking about the sound. The sound, it would be a TCH type of sound, like the word in the word church. Okay, but as far as a consonant, if you were looking for how it's transliterated, then I gave you that. But then if you're talking about the sound, it would be like the CH or the TCH sound in CH sound in church, or the TCH sound in butch. Okay, all right. So hopefully that answers your question. And if I didn't, you can clarify. All right. So I don't see any questions. So like I said, I don't want to make this video too long. I've been on for 90 minutes. It's an hour and a half. So I'm doing pretty good. Knowing my track record, I tend to make these videos too long. So I don't want to do that. So let me go back over to this. So remember, for you all to pick up your book. And let me do another poll. Since I have you all here and I have your attention, how many of you all who are watching in the chat have already purchased the book? If you have the book or you purchased it and you're waiting for it to arrive, press number 1. Press 1 if you have the book or you've ordered it. Press 1. Press 2 if you plan to order it yesterday. Like you plan to get it, ASAP. Press 2 if you plan to get it. Press 1 if you already got it. Let's do that. So let me just see and take a poll real quick. And I'm asking because we are going to set a date. Myself, Sanjeti, and Asar, we're going to set a date where we're going to have a Q&A and invite everybody on the panel. Okay, whoever wants to participate, you'll be welcomed on the panel. We can get up to 100 people now. So, we're going to keep it orderly. And we're going to field the questions and explain things and have fun, okay? So we haven't set a date for it, but we're trying to give people a chance to purchase the book, to read it, come up with some questions or some feedback and so on and so forth. So, again, press 1 if you already bought the book. Press 2 if you plan on getting it ASAP. Because we want to do this as soon as possible, but at the same time, we want to give people a chance to get it. All right, so I see a couple of y'all plan to get it. Omar said this weekend. Okay, all right, appreciate it. All right. Okay. So make sure you get it because we're gonna we want to set the date. Now we're only allowing time so that people can get it, read it, and digest it. So again, it's available on Amazon, as you see. It is if you have Amazon Prime, you'll get it in 2 days. Okay. If you don't have Amazon Prime, it'll still get to you, pretty quick. All right. So make sure you order it and read it, and we're going to answer those questions. All right. So, all right. Now, I don't want to drag this out. I really appreciate you all tuning in and following along. Make sure you thumb up the video, share the video. And if you think of questions afterwards, that's fine too. We have a Facebook group, the Sesh Netcher Facebook group. All you have to do is just create a topic and reference this video and just ask your question. Okay. So, because that's what it's about. It's about advancing us, our intellectual circles. We're advancing forward, expanding knowledge, and we want to share and edify and clarify things that may be a little confusing and the whole nine. And this particular topic for some people has been a focus for quite some time, and it's riddled with a lot of confusion. All right. And so we're addressing all the different aspects piece by piece, but like I said, we're putting together a future text publication that's going to address everything in one spot, one book. It'll be the only book you need. Okay, we'll have it all in one book. You read that book, you'll be straighter than straight, as they say. All right. But just to let you all know, this is the final analysis. So I'm gonna give you the what do you call it? The end notes or what have you. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, it's not there. Let's see. I mean, many of y'all have seen this already, but I just want to show you all. This is the final analysis, and I can't believe I cannot find it. Maybe I'm looking too fast, and that is what I'm doing. But just to let you know, Kemet means riparian country. That's what the word means. It doesn't mean black people. It means riparian country. All right. That's what the word means. But I want to show it to you all. Here we are. Right in front of my face. All right. So this is the final analysis. This is the takeaway. What does Kemet mean? Kemet mean the riparian country. All right. The riparian zone. That's what it means. And the ancient Egyptians referred to their land. And mind you, as a side note, the ancient Egyptians did not call their kingdom Kemet until the 11th dynasty. The word Kemet, several different words of Kem that we would transliterate as KM and pronounce Kem, existed in language from the beginning. Okay, so when we say that they didn't use the word Kemet until the 11th dynasty, we're not saying that there's no word Kemet prior to the 11th dynasty. We're saying that the Egyptians did not refer to their country as Kemet until the 11th dynasty. Okay, under the kingship of Mentuhotep II, the beginning of the Middle Kingdom after the Intermediate period. Okay, that's when they started to refer to the country as Kemet. Prior to that, it was known as Tawi. That's the most prolific name that the kingdom was known as, Tawi. Okay, which means dual land, or the two lands. Okay, Ta meaning land, and the we is a masculine dual. All right, making the word dual. So it's Tawi, the two lands. And the two lands that's being referred to, scholars will make you think that it's talking about Upper and Lower Kemet, as if they had an Upper and Lower Kemet, characterized that way. But Tawi represents two regions. And so Tawi is split in four ways, not just two per se. It's two sets of two. So you have the upper region and the lower region of the kingdom, but then you have the wet region and the dry region. So you have Kemet, and then you have Desheret. You have Mehu, and you have Shemau. So two sets of two, and it's reflecting in Tawi. Also, the kingdom was also called Khenu, which is a word that means the interior. It's the word that we would translate in modern times as home. Like if I say, like you go on a trip, you say, hey, I'm homesick, I want to go back home. Well, that's how the Egyptians used the word Khenu, as an interior, to go back home, like to come back to the heart of the kingdom, of where you live. Okay, so Khenu and the word Tawi were used. Okay, 11th dynasty, they started using the word Kemet. And there's a reason for that, and we're going to explain that in upcoming texts. And we're going to reserve that for later times, because that's the next question. First, we have to deal with what Kemet means, and then we're going to talk about why did they use it? Why did they call their country Kemet? And why at that particular time? Okay, so we get into that. We have the answers for all of that. All right. So anyway, I appreciate everybody tuning in. And last call for question. I see we have one more. So we have Brother Omar Reed. He says, Wajao, where does the M come in on the word remich? If I understand your question correctly, your question is kind of a little off because the M. Oh, I see what you're asking. Most of the time when you see the word spelled in the glyphs, the M is omitted, so you don't see the owl there. But that's because it became a standard. Listen, that word was used so much, and so you have to understand that when it comes to the glyphs, the scribes were very, very, very particular about aesthetics. Okay, they were very, very particular about aesthetics. If the glyphs that made up a word did not form a very neat square or rectangle shape to it, called a quadrant, if it didn't do that, then they would shift some things around. Now, the glyphs that gave the scribes the most problem in that regard were the birds. So any word that has birds in it, glyphs that are used to spell out that particular word, sometimes glyphs were shifted around or omitted. And so in this case, the owl altogether was omitted. And then they have an alternative for the owl, or the M, which they call a half blunt, which is really the profile view of a bank of a river. And so they would use that for the M. And so you have remich, so you have the open mouth, the half blunt, and then the tethering rope, spelled out remich. But so you don't see the owl there, and that's what throws people off. So I'm assuming that's why you asked the question, like where does the M come from? But it's there. All right. So just keep that in mind. It's there. All right. So all right. So that was the last question. And I thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Share this video. And then if you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch part 1. Join the Facebook group. Subscribe to everybody's channel. Asar Motep has a YouTube channel. Subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to it. I started using my YouTube channel, which is under my same name, Wajao. Make sure you subscribe to it and click the bell. And make sure you join our Facebook group if you haven't already done so. All right. And let's keep the conversation going. All right. This is definitely about educating each other. Sharing is caring, and each one teach one, all those nice sayings. Let's do it. Okay. So again, if you have any, and again, let's keep the conversation at the level of, where we're sharing information and dealing with information, and I say that because, a lot of times in the social media, we have this adversarial atmosphere, competitive, egotistical atmosphere where people just argue and talk at each other instead of to each other. And it just introduced a whole nother vibe that's detrimental to the learning process. All right. So that's what we deal with, and we don't get involved with the sloppy conversations. All right. At least I definitely can speak for myself. It just goes, I dodge it like Neo in the Matrix. I dodge those things. All right. I say, miss me with all of that good stuff. You want people want to learn, then hey, give me a call. People want to talk about something and do some demonstrations and do this and that. Hey, I'm right there. But if people want to do all other crazy stuff, nah. All right. So let's keep it that way. Anyway, I'll say Shimon Hotep, and I appreciate. Make sure you subscribe to Kofi Paisai TV, the Masi Warrior Clan, Amara Squad YouTube channel. And let's see, am I missing anything else? Dagger Squad. You have the sister Monica there giving, and the brother Garfield giving financial information. Monica dropped some really good jewels about government grants, business plans, loans, things that you may not be familiar with. She walks you through those and gives some really good information about that. Garfield with credit repair and things. Kofi Paisa TV deals a lot. He covers a lot of videos dealing with West African culture and traditions. Same thing with the Masi Warrior Clan channel. All right. Now my channel, I use it simply to just express some of the things that I talk about on Facebook, and it could be a wide range of things from evolution to ADOS to the politics to culture, whatever the case is. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna say Shem Hotep and Godet Nefer, which means good night, and I'll see you all next time.